Thank you so much for being here tonight. Delighted to have you and delighted to present LewisGriggs.
Old-timer Lewis.
Stalwart. Lewis was actually the original host of this evening when it was called Is There Life After Death? Then when we changed it to Life, Death, Near Death, and Beyond, he was also the original host. And then he co-hosted the first one, hosted this one. So it's a delight to come back around full circle.
Fun to be back. I think it was 10 years I helped facilitate these conversations.
Yeah.
Only in the beginning, when people were beginning to talk about these weird things that happen to us and about whether it's true or not. Is that okay sitting here? Would you rather sit up on here? Okay. With this few people, it's almost more tempting just to sit. Although I've got to be careful about these machines I'm sitting on, right?
You won't hurt them.
Okay, great. Well, I'll keep them off on each cheek. So, now, first thing I want to clarify, is anyone besides my two old friends in the back, three old friends in the back, have any of you four been here? You haven't heard me before, right?
I have.
Okay.
I think
You might have, okay.
But it's been a long time, so repeat everything.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Because I don't want to put you to sleep. But I have some new stuff too. The COVID stuff is brand new. But So the other thing I like to try to do is not have it be about me, because I've heard so many stories, amazing stories of what has happened, that sometimes some people make the story too much about the terrible details of the accident, which is so boring. It's like it doesn't really matter whether it was a car crash or I fell out of an airplane or I had cancer or whatever. That sounds strange, but the details aren't what the experience was about. So I try to minimize the details about what happened and maximize not only what the experience was, because that might relate to some of your own experiences, but also the learnings. Because the learnings, I hope, do relate to some of your own learnings. So my experience in all of these years now that I've been learning, like we all keep doing, is that in one short, oversimplified sentence, whatever our life experience is, and our DNA, and how we were raised, and where we were raised, and all that, we all come through different doors through which we learn whatever we each needed to learn to get a little more whole and integrated. And we end up sort of in the center with all similar truths that we've discovered. But you learned it one way, you learned it another way, we each learned it a different way, because we each had different things we needed to learn to get it. Which, and getting it isn't that simple, only one thing, but it's pretty much life, love, community, etc. And so what I'll do is share my learnings in a way that you can interrupt anytime you want with any question, and we'll do my best to try to have my learnings be generic enough so they're useful for you too, in what you needed to learn. So the details of how I got there, as I said, aren't necessarily the same. But where we get is, thank goodness, actually, pretty similar when we discover our oneness and that we really are here together. Okay? Yes, dog and cat too, and all the others. So the way it started for me was when I moved here. I drove all the way from across the country from Boston to here in 1976. After spending 2 years in public television in Boston and 2 years in government in DC and leaving because of the lack of ethics, and 2 years in a little startup, and I came here working again for public TV because that was easy to switch from Boston's to San Francisco's, because my girlfriend was in law school here and she just couldn't move. So I got a U-Haul truck and drove across the country. But I still didn't know what I wanted to be or do when I grow up. Now, to stereotype, a little bit unfairly, but mostly fairly, most of us males don't really grow up until late 20s. I felt like I had 15 years of teen years, from 13 to 28. And so I didn't really know what I wanted to do with all these experiences. And so I got some help. in a near-death experience. And just after I had arrived here, I totaled my automobile over in Berkeley on University Avenue where it crosses 80 and there's a vegetable stand there. And there did not used to be a stop sign there until after my accident. And so a pickup truck that came across went in front of me. I don't want to blame him or me, but I hit him, so I guess I'm more responsible, right? So, and it totaled the automobile. But it was my first experience ever in feeling the difference between mind, body, and spirit or soul, because my body stayed in the car, but I left, soul left, spirit left. And after managing and facilitating these kinds of conversations here for about 10 years, I've heard every different way people can go through their experiences. And we're going to take some time to hear what each of yours might have been, okay? In fact, tell me who's had what they think is some sort of an out-of-body experience. See, at least 2 of you, 3. And I don't want to have to call those near-death experiences. That language is language, so there's a little righteousness in everybody's use of language. Legally, officially, the way they like to say it, my first one and my second one were perfect near-death experiences out of body. My first one and my third one. My second one, they say wasn't, because I didn't go up into the light out of my body. I had brain injury in a river accident and was out. So they say, oh, well, your learnings there were a spiritually transformative experience or something. Call them what you will. What I like to say is, for everyone who says they haven't had one, you've had dreams. You've meditated deeply. You've had drugs. You don't have to say which of these are yes for you, but you've dreamed. You've had drugs. You've done deep transcendental meditation, or you heard a deceased relative visit you once, or something like that happened, or you had a heart attack. All kinds of things. I consider them all parts of the same, which is any consciousness outside of our body. And once we realize it's outside of our body, it starts changing our definition. Like, how can I have perfect memory of what I'm now going to share with you happened in this accident if the memory was with me up there, but the brain was in the body, and the body was in the car, and the car was totaled? Well, how do I have perfect memory? And those 3 who've heard this story, 8 times, this one, will notice it hasn't changed at all. Because my memory of it is perfect. And it's, for some reason, near-death experiences aren't the kinds of things we all like to exaggerate. Like the size of that fish or whatever, It's the same. So when I left my body in the car, unlike most other people who stayed to watch the accident or the surgery or have a review of life or visited deceased loved ones or something, I had none of that in this experience. I was rushed high speed through what we call the tunnel. I don't know why we call it a tunnel, except it just feels like it's a lot of energy and we're at the center of it, just being rushed right through it. And when I got to the other end, my experience was I was in, words never being enough, all I can call is the source of all energy, all light, all love, all consciousness, and all knowledge. That doesn't mean I had all knowledge. That means I was in the source of all knowledge and felt it around. And I also felt that by being in the source of all energy, including souls, our souls, it made me believe in, rather than just wonder about, this thing called prior lives. Because if you really know and believe in prior lives, well, then you really know that last time we weren't in these bodies. So my consciousness started to change the minute I sensed that. Because we all think of ourselves as mostly just ourselves, and similar in other ways. It's all true, but when I was feeling the source from which we all come, and I felt all of our oneness, that started to get rid of any barriers we have. Well, you don't look like me, you don't look like, that's a normal human feeling. And sometimes quite a lonely one, or at least a familial one, or at least a communal one, or at least a tribal one, or at least a national one. I mean, we all have different versions of the groups into which we feel we belong. But in this light, I suddenly felt we're all one. And uniquely different. And it might have been because I was once pre-med or something and been fascinated by DNA, but we're all one. And when our souls come into these bodies, these are the only combinations of DNA that have ever existed in the history of life on Earth. Every single one of us, so far, is absolutely unique. We are not exactly like our parents, our siblings, our children, other people who look mostly like us, our gender, our anything. So when I got simultaneously we're all one and uniquely different, and everything in between, which means we each have some things in common and some things different, well, that made it, for me at least, kind of easy to be comfortable with all of our oneness and diversity simultaneously, instead of being threatened by one or the other, So, now that learning was happening in the moment of that experience, and then I heard a voice talk to me, and not everybody has that experience. And the voice we hear is, of course, whatever voice we need to hear. In my case, it probably sounded just like this, because it was English and it was male or whatever. And I trusted it, but I definitely got a sense that it's another example of the source, call it what you will. And being raised an Episcopalian, I was raised with one style of understanding whatever the truth is, whether it's a version of God, a version of Jesus, a version of faith. But every religion has its own version. And none of them have all the answers, because the things they try to answer aren't answerable yet. So if you're going to just think, every time every one of us has tried to answer something for which we don't actually know the real answer, to call it scientific or factual or whatever, how likely are we to be right? And what's the chance that we're stuck in our own righteousness, thinking that has to be the answer? Well, if I think I have the answer and you don't, or you don't, well then what? Is it really worth killing one another like some males on the earth have done in history? So when someone asked me when I came back, gee, are you more Christian now or less? I went, you need to hear I'm way more spiritual and far less convinced that any one version of thinking they know the answer is accurate. And that makes me feel great. It means every religion starts with spirit at the core. Every non-religion starts with spirit at the core. Every indigenous person starts with spirit at the core. And then when we get to those non-understandable things, like what on earth was happening to that moon last night? Well, now we know, but we once didn't. So imagine the time I thought even the earth was flat and you thought it was round. And there's no proof yet of either. Pretty weird, huh? So that's sort of where this whole conversation is now, about near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences. There isn't specific knowledge of exactly what happens. There's just the experience each of us has. So that reminds me, before I tell you what I learned in that conversation, after I came back from that, and right here, among 2 or 3 others of us that were starting to share our stories, God, this was a long time ago. I don't know if this was 15, 20 years ago, because my first accident was March 11, 77, and I don't think I talked about it for 10 years. Many of us don't. It's too weird when we try to. People think that's, what are you talking about? It's all right, you'll get over it. So we trap it. But sometime 15 to 20 years ago, maybe 15, the Discovery Channel came and wanted to interview me and about 3 or 4 of us. Wow. Yes, we're back in human form, so we have a little bit of ego. Well, that's pretty cool. So we thought, sure, we'll do that. And we did it. And when we watched it, we were so disappointed. They hadn't told us that what they were going to do was defunk what we had said instead of cherish it or even wonder about it or even notice how wonderful it was. They said they could prove all of these feelings and imaginations were able to be created by chemicals, drugs, chemicals, electrical, whatever. We were so upset until either one of us or together we figured out something that solved it all for us, which is, oh my God, what if they're right? What if nothing happened except we imagined it because the brain was damaged, and when it was damaged it imagined these things? And first we thought, well, that would be terrible, I'd be really embarrassed. And then we went, are you kidding me? You know what? It's changed our life. So if it's really fake and we imagined the whole thing, it has changed our life entirely in nothing but wonderful ways. So let them believe what they believe, and we'll just keep talking about it and believing what we believe. I'm serious, that happened. So since there's no proof, I'll just keep telling you what I experienced and how it changed my life. And it's up to you, in your own experiences, in your own crises through which we've had the greatest learnings we've ever had, whether they were out of body or not. And all of us not glad that those crises happened, but all of us recognizing, oh yeah, our greatest learnings did come from that crisis and that crisis and that crisis. And if we keep getting more crises, we either shut down totally, but most of us don't. Most of us have an inner strength that goes, every time there's a little crisis or even a big one, we go, whew, wonder what I got called to learn in this one. Right? I find it to be true. And I find it now to be a real relief that I don't know the answer to everything anymore. And God, that means I get to learn. Not only from my life experiences, but from yours and yours and yours and yours. Cool. Okay, so this voice said to me, unlike all these other people whose stories I'd heard, quote unquote, Lewis, you are called here to have this conversation and to be sent back because you're not doing your work. Literally, quote unquote. And I, having been raised Episcopalian, I had said, oh, well, I didn't have this body there with me, but it's as if I said, oh, well, I'm acting as a cross now. Take me, I'm yours. I surrender. I will do your work. That's what I said. And the voice said, mm-mm. No, Lewis, it isn't my work you need to be doing. It's your work. It's your work you each need to do. Whatever it is. That's one of the ways we all become different, as I told you already. These doorways through which we came, and that upbringing, and those parents, and that DNA, and those life experiences, we learned different things the way we learned them. And it's our work. And you know, we tend to get whatever learning opportunities, or call it, we tend to get whatever learning opportunities we need to get it. I actually find that not only a relief that there's an opportunity to learn every time, but when people say, Lewis, do you think 3 is enough? I actually, with sort of the healthiest humor I think I have, go, you know what? Yeah, I hope I don't need to get hit so hard anymore. I hope I get it now. We'll find out, but I think I do. But I thought that last time too. So this voice then said, no, it's not my work you need to do, Lewis, it's yours. And I went, well, what is my work? Like, take me on yours, tell me I'm here in all consciousness. Let me know, what is my life's purpose? We all have wondered what that is about ourselves. And I was asked a question which, when you really listen to the depth of it, is the same question which we all have to answer. Even if the words are a little different, but they aren't very different. And that is, what is it that keeps you from being all you're capable of being? Now, instead of listing, even accurately, okay, no judgment, all of the external things that keep us from being all we want to be, that mom, that dad, that town, that culture, that race, that gender, that what, all of those are pieces of the truth. Those things are true. And that's not what the question is actually asking. One way to hear it is, it didn't ask what keeps you from doing all you would like to do. It asks what keeps you from being all you are capable of being in your fullest self. And I didn't have a clue. And the reason I didn't have a clue is that now I had to answer to this voice and figure out what the answer was for me, so therefore I share with you as if you asked me. Well, I was raised with not only a white male in North America, but a 14-generation all Anglo white male since the Mayflower. Just imagine the amount of righteousness you lead to make sure you're only sleeping with an Anglo white, none of the rest of you, an Anglo white. Woof. Now, I'm not saying I personally, right? It wasn't me, but it's true that when I do 23andMe, and there it is, all 100% of me is right there in the British Isles. 100%. Scottish and English, mostly. And so having been raised that way, and that's not true of all of us, but having been raised that way and with enough privilege from some talented, entrepreneurial, successful people along the way, I won't bore you with the details, but it was true that I was actually able to do whatever I wanted. And I never was arrogant about it. I just noticed it was true, and I guess I was lucky. I was never arrogant and thought I deserved it, nor did I feel guilt or shame. I just noticed, yeah. But because I was able to do whatever I wanted, I never was forced to do the deeper learning about being a more authentic self than all I was able to do, or be in my tribe and be in my community. In fact, most of us were taught how to be the way you're supposed to be in this family or this tribe. It takes a really wonderful set of parents to say, I don't want you to be anything except who you are. And we try. All of us parents try. But none of us do it perfectly, especially since each child is different. You know, what is it? So that's a short answer that I gave. And because I was raised that way, I did become conscious that I never knew how to do any of the bridging, code switching, call it what you will, to help relate to anybody different. They all, in these 400 years here, had learned to do it with these Anglo yuppie wasps. Everybody had learned to do it. So even though our Constitution, says, we the people, you know that it really said, before they scratched it out, we, the straight, white, Anglo, land-owning men, not our wives, and not anybody else, are the ones who came here to have freedom to be ourselves. And then, they don't say this, but this is the really short version of sort of what has happened. Why then, I, of course, give all the rest of you equal opportunity, as if I have the power to give it to you, to be just like me. I hate acting those lighter sentences out, but you know, that's what's happened, and it's still happening. Even we 60s kids who think we helped change it all, yeah, we made some progress. But a black male friend of mine who does diversity training with me, which is the punchline of therefore how I got called to do my life's work, he said, yeah, Lewis, we've made progress. The knife used to be a foot deep, and now it's only 9 inches deep. Just imagine what that feels like. How's that for a metaphor? What if it's 6 inches deep? 3 inches deep? What if we've made so much progress it's no longer there? There's just a lot of scar tissue and trauma. Whew. So it was actually in the light that I got, I never knew how to do the bridging. And I had experienced in real life, like after business school, trying to do some business with the Japanese, and I didn't have a clue what was happening at the table. Not a clue. They were speaking English and Japanese. They had all the power at the table, and I don't even mean power over. I mean, they had all the power to facilitate and manage the relationship. That was the first time in my life at age 35 I ever had that experience. I'd had the experience that I always was kind of in charge. And again, I don't mean arrogantly or with power over, but I mean, I had the easy part of the relationship, I thought. Yeah, easier, yes, but more sophisticated? No. So it was in the white light that I learned that, in addition to some life experiences. So then, do any of you remember the movie Amadeus? Where Mozart hit the perfect note and went, there it is. This voice, when I said, I think it has to do with, I don't know how to bridge any of our differences, everyone else is doing it better than I. The voice said, there it is, Lewis, there's your work. And I was sent back down without another word, high speed in the same tunnel, until I came into this body and literally can remember getting in it this tightly so that just like those tight surgical gloves, you know, not the loose blue ones we don't wear at the sink that we should, those tight surgical ones, whoa, until I was totally in, and then I can't do that without my finger. Phew. All this light disappeared out of the car. And the car was totaled and I had no physical damage. And I walked out of the car and told the ambulance from Kaiser, there's no problem. And life started to change. So here's another one that some of you might have learned in your own life. Doors started to open that I had nothing to do with. That may seem strange to you, but to this little privileged white boy who opened whatever door I wanted, when I could feel doors open, instead of me being afraid, especially since I'd just come back from the light, I got, wow. There's a reason that these doors have opened and are calling me to enter, to learn what I can learn, with no power over or under anybody, just being. Just being. That was new. Am I safe? Am I safe just to be? Not to be in control? Not to do? Not... Wow. I loved it. I started to feel the gift of not knowing the answer. Not needing to be right all the time. Not needing to try to fix my wife or my daughter or my girlfriend whose emotions needed to be heard. Just another general stereotype, but there's a piece of it you all know there's some truth in it. It was fantastic, and I try to have never left it. And when I do leave it back in human form, anybody who knows me well enough, including any of those three, know they're free to say, hey, Lewis, get back. Get back. Be. Be the authentic self we know of you. So that was the first experience and most of the learnings. And from that, I and my global wife that I met at business school started the first diversity training in the U.S., teaching, her words, straight white men who don't get it how to get it. And you, Lewis, are it. I went, how can I be it? I'm the problem. She said, that's how. And you can only teach what you have to learn yourself. And every one of the videos we made and the seminars, the workshops, the books we published, the guides we wrote, the National Diversity Conference, TV, radio, with no competition in the whole country for about 10 years, because everybody thought, what are you talking about? Valuing our diversity. We put racism to bed years ago, didn't we? And that's what the whites said, and the blacks said, if you think I can go into the workplace and be my natural self, you don't get it, Lewis. So I was so out on the edge, not with my own knowledge and arrogance, with my own needing to learn how really serious the gap was and is. So that, let's say, went on for 20 years of amazing success and lots of wonderful change, we thought. And yes, lots of good change. But then there was a second one. And since there are these three, sometimes I think it feels better to say, all right, any questions you have just about this one or something you want to share in your own life where you had a similar experience or whatever. Or do you just want to be silent while I drink water and then we'll move on? You can say whatever you wish. Or not. Okay. So, why wasn't that enough? What was the next learning? Well, you know how we're all supposed to learn how to own that we each 100% responsible for whatever happens to us? Well, that sounds too extreme, because that car hit us or things happen, but how about we're all 100% responsible for the little piece that we are part of each relationship we're in? And if it's not 50-50, if each of us has had moments of such arrogance and righteousness to go, you're the problem. And all of our friends can see it. I don't like acting those words out, but in a way we've all been there at moments. And I've had to go to myself and to others and say, wait a minute, all right, what if you can prove that 90% of all of that happened was caused by all that external stuff? Isn't there 10% to which you helped contribute? No? Oh, how 1%? Can you handle 1%? And now can you own 100% responsibility for that piece? Haven't we all noticed that when someone else owns 100% responsibility for their piece, it gets safer? And we can go, well, thank you. Either we're still stuck and go, well, thank you I'm glad you noticed. Or we can be open and go, well, I guess I might have contributed to it. Or I guess before you acted that way, I did this. And, oh, is that related? Oh, you mean we all do have histories? You mean you felt that way before with that mother, that father, that lover, that child, that friend? You mean I didn't cause that feeling in you? Maybe I triggered it, or you triggered mine. But to realize I or you triggered it, just to pick a word, is different than caused it. Because when I did that or said that, it reminded you of when your father or mother or whomever did that or said that, and your reaction to it. So once we can do that with one another, God, we get safe. Anyway, how is that related? Here's how. We all have lots of learnings. One of my learnings was that my wonderful, brilliant, global, bipolar wife and mother of my kids not only helped run the company with her global consciousness, but our first child, my wife was is still, and a close friend of mine and my current wife's, a bipolar 2, and brilliant and creative, like most of them can be. But our daughter was a bipolar 1 and schizoaffective, and she still is, and she's alive and better than ever. But because of that, she had to be specially schooled often, and she was on and off the streets, even starting at 13. I mean, what makes the little privileged white girl leave a private girls' school and hit the streets at age 13, 8 years old, the 8th grade, instead of go to camp? What? I didn't know. She became my greatest teacher, and still is. But the reason I even bring her into this is that she was in a recovery school at age 13 to 15, even though up in Montana, a boarding school, even though they never took teens until they were more pubescent and more dangerous to themselves. And they took her because she was way out there. And after 2 years, she was ready to graduate and was perfectly all re-corrected. Or so I thought. And but neither her mother went up to the graduation, wanted to. What? Nor did her stepmother at the time. What? So that's another story. What was it about them that wouldn't do that? I love being a dad. So anyway, I went and she was 15, and I took my 10-year-old son, her 10-year-old brother. And once graduation was over, I said, and this was 20 years later, this was Father's Day, June 15th, 97, up in Montana. And I said to her, "You look fantastic. You see how wonderful?" I kept saying, "You are. You're this so amazing. Well done. Now, you know, I've taught you skiing and hiking and nature and Mount Tam every weekend from the city, but you know, I've never taken you on whitewater. Are you willing to go?" And they all said, "Sure, Dad," because Dad always did nice things. So we went whitewater rafting in the Middle Fork of the Flathead River in Glacier Park, Montana. And I'd done a lot of whitewater up in our Sierra. And as the water started to get fast, my 10-year-old son looked at me. You could just see the fear in his eyes. And I went, "Oh, we just laugh about this now." I said, "Oh, Ian, trust me. You're going to love this." No sooner had I said that, I do not have any memory still of what I'm now going to share with you. Zero. This is a story that I have no memory of. Because a 100-foot tall tree fell off the edge of the river and landed on my head in the raft and my son's head. My daughter avoided it. And the short version I now know because 20 years later, I went back to the same spot with both my kids and my current and forever wife, and the two guides who had been with us drove from 5 hours away. Even on Father's Day, they gave up their families to come be with a reenactment of this entire accident and then finishing the river afterwards instead of what happened. And so now I know what happened was that they considered my son to be fractured skull from the tree, but face down in the raft and drowned and therefore dead. And the tree was on my head, fractured skull, against the rubber raft, and the raft was still sitting here because the roots of the tree were still attached to the ground and the water was rushing past us. So just picture this rubber raft. And the tree's on my head with blood and pus. My son is drowned. They think we're both dead. My poor bipolar daughter is the one having trauma, right? We don't remember anything. And she wrote about it. She wrote a 10-page thing when we sent her back to her recovery school to try to recover from this. Because I was in a coma for 8 days and my son was in a coma for 2 days. And his brain injury was mild and he needed to be special schooled. And mine was so serious I had to have 3 years of hospitalized brain injury recovery in San Francisco at St. Mary's Hospital next to Golden Gate Park, where they specialize in it. But in the coma, I have no memory for 8 days. And when I came out, I didn't know who I was or who this was, my wife in the room or my parents. whoa, who are you and what's happened? It's a weird feeling. So I do start to have memories of when the brain was so damaged. Now, in hindsight only, and I'm going to tell you why I imagine this and what the greatest learning was of this out-of-body experience or in-body experience, was that maybe, I'm just imagining, why was I called to have this experience? So I'm only guessing, although it is a learning I have, so it was either true or I just made it up and made it true. I don't know which, but let's say that when I was first 20 years before called because I'm an example of the stereotype who doesn't get it, the ethnocentric, ignorant, you know, in Midwestern nice we call it in Minnesota. We think we're really nice people, and of course you should all want to be just like us. So having grown up like that, it makes sense that I was called to need to do this work. And yet I was also chosen to have the skills and the education and the privilege I had to be able to know how to go raise the millions of dollars I raised over those 20 years from 100 of the Fortune 500 companies to produce all these award-winning videos and workshops and start the National Diversity Conference and all that stuff, and TV and radio and training and facilitating and coaching and all of that. Well, guess what? All of that requires not only being driven by spirit to serve, but it also requires well-trained and educated left frontal lobe, which in the river accident was removed. I'm not kidding. The MRI today doesn't look very much different than the MRI then. It's called brain plasticity. And I remember once being tested about 3 years into the accident, and the insurance company was trying to see if I was still disabled mentally. And I couldn't solve a certain problem that, of course, I would have gotten an A on once. And then that same test was given to me 3 hours later. And now I'm only going to exaggerate to tell you, I felt something happen in the brain, and I got it. Well, it was new synapses were created to find a way to connect the old data in the computer, which is in there somewhere, but the synapses were broken. So new synapses were created between the left brain and the right brain, and other parts of the brain took over to be able to do what I did with the left frontal lobe when that's what I had so well trained. But it took 3 years, and my daughter said it took 5 years before I was the same dad. So what is the learning that could have come out of the entire left frontal lobe being removed? Remember, we each have whatever learnings we need. Nothing wrong with your left frontal lobe or yours, mine either. In fact, look at what it achieved. It's fantastic. So what would the learning now be? I'll tell you, it was just as amazing as what I got in the light. And it was in the first week out of those 3 years when I was trying to walk on those horizontal bars, and the brain couldn't make the body do it. To use a metaphor of a tornado I grew up with, or hurricane if that's what you grew up with, but whatever it is, we all know that in the center of all of those spinning winds, there is stillness. In fact, zero energy, 100% stillness. And I felt that while I was aware that even though the lungs and heart in that case, not in chemo, but not in COVID, in that case it was working, but I couldn't walk, I couldn't do anything, I couldn't play tennis, I couldn't speak in public, I couldn't act like a father, I couldn't be a lover, I couldn't do anything. But you know what I got? At this core, I am, and each of you are. Whatever it took for you to learn this, you've had moments like this. Again, was it meditation? Was it prayer? Was it sleep? Was it drugs? Was it whatever? I discovered that at the core, I am. That's all. I am. I'm 100% am. I just am. Even though nothing else is working in this metaphorical tornado around me called my body, my personality, my family, my culture, that is not who we are. That is a part of what our life becomes. It is a part of our personality. I'm not saying it's bad. It's good and bad or whatever. But our soul is our soul. And it's the same soul that was here last time in a different body. Try that one on. And next time in a different body, try that one on. I am. And guess what? That's enough. I actually got not only that I am enough, every single one of you is enough. So it's as if I needed more integration and wholeness. It's as if in the white light I learned we're all one, and we are uniquely different, and everything in between, and I learned how to behave and do the bridging and the code switching and the language and the behavior and the eye contact or not, and the body contact or not. I mean, and listening or not. All of that. And none of that is what we are. And we are 100% light and love and energy and spirit, exactly what I found in the light. And it all comes into us through the 8th chakra, into all of our chakras and out. And it doesn't die. The soul doesn't die. It doesn't get injured. It isn't violated. Who our bodies are, our personalities are, our egos are. But when a person who's had so much trauma that they don't think they can ever be their natural selves, and that wasn't me, except these critical accidents that I don't want to compare trauma with trauma. But some of those who've had real trauma are finally able to discover, you know what? That was terrible, but that was then, and that was my body, and I am fine. And that's what therapy tries to help us get. That was an amazing learning. And they don't call that a near-death experience. I was way nearer death then. Then the reason they call the first one near-death is because I went where we go when we die. Or we think. That was nearly like when we're dead. I was hanging on to life. And in the year after those 3 years, when I continued to do cranial, sacral, and other things, because the hospital let me go when they thought I was back to normal. Well, normal in the entire society, let's say, is 70%. Well, all of us know what it feels like when each of us feels like we're at our 70 percentile. But we're not at 100 because of the flu or the trauma or whatever, right? So I could tell, you could say I'm back. I couldn't drive a car yet. But the accident happened in Montana, not here, so no one took my driver's license away. Well, I wasn't about to go driving and kill your child. I'm a dad. So I had to hire somebody to help me learn again how to drive, so I was driving safely. It took a year, another year. The multitasking that we do, and now we're driving at 70 miles an hour in that lane, and you're in the other one, and you're in the other one, and we're trusting each other. Wow! Wow! We'd better be careful texting at the same time. Anyway, so I had all those learning experiences and coming back, and my daughter finally said, "You're the same dad. Welcome back, Dad." I told you that was 5 years. But now I got a new learning. We're all one, we're uniquely different, and I am and you are. And I learned to look in the eyes of everybody I meet. And instead of the early phases where I'd look in and go, well, I don't know how to relate to you because I don't know how to bridge, but I'm at least going to be polite, and I know you're just as good as I am. But now I go, I just look in everybody's eyes so quickly that I have to be careful that it's not too intense for some people. I have to see if they're that open. And when they're that open, it takes 15 seconds for each of us to feel the energy within us and within the other. either get enhanced and go, wow, I see you. And I feel seen. And you say, I see you too. And at that moment, we don't care what body you're in or clothes you're wearing or personality. It's like, I see you. And once we see each other that well, then we can go, oh, now tell me, who are you? Who else are you? What's your life? What did you learn? And I'll share mine. And it's like there's no judgment anymore. And it's like, God, it is so wonderful to really value the diversity we each bring to one another, as long as we're safe and we don't hit and steal. And, you know, but once we can feel we're not only safe, but you're just as amazing as I am. And that's not ego. I mean, I am. Not I'm wonderful. I just am. And so are you. It's such a gift. So that was the second one. And it changed everything. I had to lay off all the employees of my company. What am I going to do? Run a company when I can't read, walk, or talk? And I had to start doing, I already was doing facilitation, but that I had to learn too. For a guy that, as you can already tell, I could talk for 90 minutes to 1,000 people or 500 people. Well, that's back. But it's also back that I can listen and just be silent. Or back is the wrong word. I learned how to be, just listen and be silent and ask. And so instead of all that speaking and training and running a company and left frontal lobe type A, I learned just to facilitate. It is so nice to facilitate. If that's what we were doing tonight, and we're going to take some time to do that, which means I get to listen. It's so cool. And when we do it really well, it's equal. We're all in it together, and I learn as much as you learn. And I learned to coach. I got certified at CTI, Coaches Training International in San Rafael. So coaching, the first thing they taught me the first day, shut up, Lewis. You don't know anything. Today you're a deaf, dumb, stoned surfer dude. You know nothing. Just ask and listen to who they are. That's coaching. But you know what? As we've all are learning imperfectly, that's not just coaching. That's relating. That's loving. That's being a good friend, a good partner, a good employee, a good worker, a good parent, a good child, a good human. Wow. So that's all I've been doing for the second 20 years. Any questions now before we go into the third one?
What about your boy?
Thank you. The boy was brought up from underneath the water, knocked out, and was found to have life. And he was put into the arms of my daughter. And this 10-page story she wrote about, and I started to mention and never did, in her recovery, had one paragraph in it, which when I was able to read about a year later, when she and my brilliant little stepdaughter was so worried that Lewis might never be able to read again, I could read one sentence. And to read, I mean read, notice, understand, and even be able to repeat. Can you imagine with all of our education not being able to do that with a sentence? That sentence said, "My father is dead. My brother is dying in my arms. And when I tell my mother she's going to kill herself, then what am I going to do?" Exactly. So the trip we took 20 years after that, which was just 2 years ago, was just as good for me and my son as it was for her, to go back to the river, to the spot it happened, have them tell all the stories of exactly what happened, to be so glad we're alive and we're looking at the same spot it happened. And once we'd asked all the questions and heard all the answers, we got on the raft and we finished this whitewater. But it was only threes, you know, anybody who knows. This wasn't little falls, this wasn't fours and fives. This was just a nice sunny float with, some rough water that was fun and splashy, but not dangerous or scary. And we finished. That was a really healthy thing to do. But to go back to now why did that happen? Go back to that point about how did that happen and who's responsible for that accident? And can I own any part of it? Well, it sounds so awful that the answer would be no, I didn't do that. Guess what? When I said, you want to go whitewater rafting? And they said, sure, Dad. We went up there and they said, oh, we can't raft today. What do you mean you can't raft today? That's your whole business. This is what you do. So you can see my left frontal lobe was back enough to put on my version of white male righteous control and try to get what I wanted. So embarrassing. So I said, well, wait a minute. What do you mean we can't raft today? And they said, there's a legal limit on how the state holds it, on how high the water is and how wide the river is and how fast the water is. And the water is too high, too wide, and too fast from snowmelt and prior rain. There are trees in the river all over the place. It's too dangerous. We can't go. And I went, tell me what the limit is? And they told me. And are you over that limit? No, we're at the limit, Lewis. But you're not over it. So I can still go if we want. And they said, well, I guess you can if you want. It's just crazy. You'll have to sign here. And they let us go down in the raft with our guide with us and another raft behind us with the other guides who had nothing else to do that day except to go see what the river looked like. Thank God they were there. So that accident never would have happened if this guy wasn't 100% responsible for you call it 1% or 50 or 90, I don't care. I love now, even my wife and I do this so well now. It's like, I don't care if I or you are 10% or 50 or 90% for this moment that just happened. It doesn't matter. I just want to know what happened and what's my piece and what's your, oh, wow, God, I get it now. Oh, thank you. It's like, but look what it took. Yes?
Well, what would the difference have been, like 5 seconds or 10 seconds at that point where the tree fell to where you would have missed it?
That's exactly right. That's why that part of it, let's just assume, is another calling from the universe that Lewis needed another learning. And he needed to learn what I am feels like. And he needed to learn what happens when his whole left frontal lobe is taken away and he's no longer in control of anything. And he has to lay off 25 to 50 employees and all that income has to stop.
Or is the lesson that you can lose everything and be brain damaged and still come back to be able to tell other people that it's possible for them to return from the same thing?
Thank you. And the amazing learning in there is not only that, which is amazing, but we're all just fine.
Right.
And I've tried to work with people now. I've been with some people who've died and some who've recovered. It's amazing to have had that experience. Oh, and then a year after that, when I started doing trauma therapy, after a year of it, and I was asked, well, why do you want to do this? And I said, as strange as this may or may not sound, I said, because I have no memory of what happened in the river. The curious part of me would actually like to, I keep forgetting I do the wrong thing and put my hand on top of the mic. I kind of would like to see if I'm open enough now, because remember what trauma does, its purpose is that it takes away your ability to actually be having the experience while you're having it, while you're being so damaged. That's what happens. And so trauma worked. It was so serious. Not only I had no memory of it, but the brain wasn't capable of it anyway. And so I said, I would like to see if you can get me open enough now, having done all this recovery, so that I can actually find again somewhere the memory of what actually it felt like when the tree hit. And she said, well, that's asking for a lot, Lewis, but I'll have to take you to Peter Levine, who wrote the book Waking the Tiger, something like that. And he's the trauma expert in this country, and he had a conference that happened to be in San Francisco that year. And he had 350 or 400 of all the trauma experts around the country, and he was training them on how to take it further. And I was to be the invited guinea pig up on the stage. I went, great. So I went up on stage, and he said, hi, I'm Peter. Hi, I'm Lewis. What can I do for you? And I said, I want you to take me back to the river, if you can, and see if I can remember what happened. And he said, okay, close your eyes. And he took me, and to keep what was about 20 minutes on stage short, I'll just say there were 3 key things that happened. Aspects of memory, not pictorial memory that's perfect, but experiential memory, if that's good enough. And I started saying, oh my God, I had just been hit by this tree, and every ounce of me, mind, body, and spirit, is just trying to live. Just live. That's all, just live. And after experiencing that for a while, I don't know what else he did, if he did anything to move me, I don't know. I just know what shifted in me. And I started crying on stage, saying, where's my boy? Where's Ian? Because I had no idea, and every parent knows, yes, even males, even though they didn't grow on our body, if we're really loving fathers, where's my child? And eventually I found out he was at least alive and in his daughter. How did I know that? The tree's on my head. How did I get that? I don't know, but I got it and I stopped crying. Okay, I'm alive now, and my son is alive. And the tree's still on my head. Now I can do everything possible to recover. Every single thing that I can do at this moment just to stay alive and recover. I had those 3 experiences on the stage with this guy, and I'm going, thank you. That's enough. Yeah.
But the one thing that happened was you did not have an OBE to where you were suspended above to where you see the tree and your son and you.
That's correct. I had no knowledge out of my body at all. No out-of-body experience. I didn't see the accident. I didn't see anything. And no part of me ever knew what had happened.
So there was no hypnosis used trying to recall that from that?
Correct. No. All that would, thank you. Your questions are always really good, as are anyone's who has them. Just have them. I know he's one of our guys who's always here and has these great questions because he thinks a lot about this. Thanks. And that's right. But at least I was able to have some experience of what I was experiencing in my body under the tree. And that's also a great question, because not only because of what I shared before that was a perfect memory in the light, but wait till you hear about my perfect memory under the COVID ventilator. Oof. All right. Any other questions before I have another drink? And then
I just have one.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead, there you go.
both of you go.
Okay. You just said something, trauma takes away, what, the ability to know what?
My understanding that is, and anybody else can make it better, is that trauma has the impact. It's like the body's, this is the way the body handles real trauma, is it doesn't want you to have to experience it beyond a certain point. Okay? A similar thing happens when an accident happens, and when we do leave our body, when we die, or at least those of us who've been out twice, there is absolutely, I just want you to know, there is no pain. There is no pain and no trauma the minute we leave our body. Zero. When our parents die, whether in saying goodnight, I love you, or in an accident, there is no pain, there is no trauma. All the pain and all the trauma is in the body. 100%. We all know that. That's one thing we all have had. Okay.
Well, Ian will be in his 30s now, right? So did this experience impact him in any similar way as it did you, having been in a coma?
Does it impact who?
Your son,
Oh, thank you.
how did he?
Yeah, his brain injury wasn't as serious. It took, and again, here we go again. What does privilege enable? And his medical, do we really have equal access to health and education? No. So we were able to send him to a boarding school that focused on making sure he had attention every day from a counselor. Every day for 4 years, grade 9 to 12. And before that, he was in a little tiny private school that had 10 kids in each class with daily attention on him. And that daily attention helped him recover everything that he might not have recovered without it. And so because he had that disability, he was allowed to have extra time to do his SATs. Well, maybe we all would have gotten an 800 with extra time. I don't know. But he got an 800 on his math SATs, and he's now an engineer at GoPro, and he's fine.
Oh, cool.
Okay? That's true. Thank you. Okay. So, yes.
As a result of these two experiences, did you ever experience any past lives? Because you're talking about a current period.
Definitely. I'm aware of 2 prior lives. One with my current daughter, in which, oh God, the short version is, it was in 350 BC and she was an oracle. If every male doesn't know what the word oracle means, the women do, and we need to know. Right? Do we all know why I said that? Anyone not?
Why?
Okay, thank you. Because as some of us feel now, that we aren't exactly the same. We're mostly the same in even our bodies, but there is a difference in gender, even though they're normal shaped curves. I was a more loving dad than the bipolar mother was able to be, and maybe you can lift 300 pounds and I can't, who knows. But there still is a difference in that. If you just picture that men grew up, if in the caves we had to go kill the buffalo or kill this other enemy, we had to learn how to do that without feeling. Well, maybe that's why you sometimes feel that at this moment maybe we listened, but we didn't really hear, and we didn't really have feelings like you do. And you have the other extreme. All you had to do was take care of our children we made and love them, and that's not all you had to do, but you did that even better than we did. And your ability to love with sensitivity, and even the way you relate when you meet another woman is usually, not always, some women can be awful, right? But you can really relate to each other first. We don't relate to each other first. We have to spend a moment finding out, are we safe together? We don't think about it. It's just natural. So, where was I going with that?
Oracle.
Thank you. See, I'm not 100% back. Then, and all too often now, and lots of times in history, women's consciousness and knowledge and wisdom was so threatening to men that's why they didn't want them to have equal power. And in 350 BC, and in a lot of other times, but in this case, the monks, or priests, whatever you call them, BC, imprisoned them and my daughter with drugs and sexual abuse. They just imprisoned and raped and drugged to keep all that wisdom imprisoned. So I said, getting this reading, I said, oh my God, no wonder she chose her mother. Her mother will understand that. Her mother grew up in the Middle East. Her mother's bipolar. Her mother had a lot of her own abuse as a child. They can understand. I happen to have a chemistry so balanced that, my daughter once said to me when they flattened her to help treat her, said, Dad, is this what it's like for you? And I went, no. I laugh and I cry and I have emotions. I'm human, but I don't have this and I don't have this. My chemistry happens to be really balanced. So I hardly ever have understood what my daughter's going through until she's learned to tell the 100% truth and teach me and help me know her. It's such a gift. But so I said, no wonder you picked your mother, but why'd you pick me? Why did she pick me if I don't know that? And he said, well, you were one of the priests. That was kind. And I, too, having already been out and back, said, oh my God, if it's true, it doesn't feel true to me, given my whole life experience and how my daughters have felt and my wives have felt and my girlfriends have, I'm not aware of any part of me that has ever been guilty of that. But if it's true, that means I have to work through it and heal this trauma. And he said, no, you're right. You were the only priest who not only never abused her and tried to stop it. You tried to stop them from it. You were the only, you visited her regularly. You connected with her. She knew you were safe. She trusted you. But when they wouldn't stop it, you reported it out in Greece or whatever. And they were so irritated at you, they defrocked you and kicked you out of their monastery. And so your daughter knows that you're the only male she's ever met who can see her and love her with no power over her and no sexual energy at all. I have to learn to stop doing that. That's another one. Excuse me. Thank you. Thank God. And it's true. We just had the most amazing relationship all our life. When I pulled her out of her body, only in a place like this do I say things like this. When I was pre-med once, so they weren't worried I was going to faint, and so this was a C-section, even though the second one wasn't. And the same female GYN surgeon was doing the surgery with me. I couldn't legally do the parts, but once she cut the uterus open, I went there and I went, wait, move, oh, that's your pancreas. And she was up at the other end going, Lewis, what are you doing? And I'm going, oh, I found your pancreas. And so I pulled my daughter out of this cut uterus and wiped all the blood and everything off and the white wax. And I looked at her. And not only did I look in her eyes like I can look in everybody's eyes so directly you can feel it right away, but 2 bolts of light shot out of her eyes to mine. And since it had already been out in the light, I didn't freak out and think there's a demon here or something. I actually went, oh my God, you are here to change my life. And I just held her. I'm not kidding. That's what these sessions are for. I would love some more water. Thanks.
And the second past life?
Third.
No, I know now that's 2 of them.
Colder room temperature.
I do watch. It's too hot for me, but
No, for water.
oh, cold. So, Father's Day, June 15, 97, 20 years later, is not only 07 and 17, but actually it was 23 years later in 20. When my new, finally, life and partner forever, that I met up at Harbin, by the way, those of you who know Harbin. And each of our prior partners had affairs, and we are those weird people who think monogamy is the greatest intimacy on earth, with trust and friendship and partnership. And it's like, I don't know why other people make those choices, but each to their own, right? In the whole spectrum, each to their own. I've learned that, but not us. So anyway, we met, and that's it. We've been apart. We haven't been apart since the night we met. And it's now 7.5 years. And for the rest of our lives. But once we drove around the country on the fall of 19 with a casita trailer behind our station wagon, because her kids were now in college and mine were older. Mine are now, yesterday, 40, and a couple weeks from now, going 35. My daughter's older. Hers are 23 and 21 and in college. Once we got back from driving around the country for 4 months and 12,000 miles, and we didn't have a place to live because she decided she wanted to drive around now that she was free after 22 years of parenting and homeschooling one special child. So we each had a special child and each a totally normal child, which meant the minute I met her sons and I looked at the special child and listened to him, he looked at me and went, "Are you for real?" And I actually that was the greatest compliment I'd ever had. He felt seen, totally seen and not judged. Why? Because I had learned with Ashley, my daughter. And when Ashley met Johanna, my wife, she said in the same hour, "Oh my God, you love my father more than my mother ever did, or my stepmother ever did." The one in between, I'm on third. And wow, will you love me the rest of my life like that? Because even my mother can't love me like you love. And we're all friends, her mother, and they love each other. But anyway. So after we drove around the country and she wanted to decide where are we going to live. She speaks 5 languages and has lived all over the world. One of her languages is Swahili. She lived in Kenya. And she lived in Botswana, and she's German DNA, but half American, half German, because her father was in the World Bank. And anyway, it's like no place is home for her, and she didn't want to stay here. And I said, okay, I'll drive around without knowing, and when we get back, we'll decide. Well, I feel lucky that when we got back, she did say, all right, I'm willing to stay, because our 4 kids are here in the Bay Area, and at least for a while, let's stay. So we rented a cottage, because after big divorces, if any of you have been through them, you know half the value goes to the other in California. It's 50-50. And when the money's all gone, I told you how it had all disappeared because of the river accident, then we just rent a cottage for $3,000 a month in Berkeley. And that's all we can do. And it's great. It's all we need. So we're happy. But we found this cottage and we thought, great. Life is now going to be great. This is all we need. Boom. 2 things hit, cancer and COVID. And the first week of February of 20, I was diagnosed with stage 3 colorectal cancer. Well, they killed all the cancer, the little nut in the colon. But, again, I was pre-med, so I won't take this beyond, I'll pretend we're eating dinner, but, every part of our body has a function. Well, if you haven't learned yet the function the rectum has, go pay attention. When it's failed, you're in trouble. So stage 3 meant I would either die or they'd have to do surgery. Well, that's like most parts of the body, not legs and arms, but any organic part of your body, surgery is really dangerous. I said, no surgery. I will do whatever chemo and radiation you require, and I wish it would be enough, but I'm not going to pretend it is enough. I will do every non-medical thing possible with my wife's help. And from CBD, what a gift CBD is. Have any of you not discovered that? It kills cancer cells in addition to pain and other things. And I mean no THC. I mean 0 THC, just CBD. And whereas chemo, guess which cells it kills? All of them. The reason they give you blood tests every 2 weeks to see if your immune system is now so destroyed that you can't take anymore. So wherever your cancer is, chemo will go kill it. Or try to. And the side effects are horrendous. The experience is horrendous. So here I am doing chemo, powerful chemo, in the newest version possible to try to avoid the surgery and to try to kill the cancer and everything else. And after 6 months, on the 6th last time of chemo given to me by the nurse at Kaiser in Oakland, she also gave me COVID. She didn't know it. I got it from her. And COVID then, in the beginning, that was the one that killed 1,000 a day. And that's one that killed my first cousin in 2 weeks, no hope. And so I had trouble breathing immediately. And within a week, I could hardly breathe at all. But you know what? Then it took a week to get the results. And you know what else? They wouldn't take you in ICU unless you were proven positive. Understandably, but wow, that's why we were dying in the first 2 weeks. Now we've learned the first 2 weeks are the worst damage that that virus can do if you don't attack it. Anyway, so I was rushed into ER at the end of 2 weeks. I could hardly breathe at all. It took 1 day to take me from ER up to ICU, and it took only 3 other days to get me from ICU, because then they can at least give you oxygen in various ways. But I couldn't even breathe enough with the oxygen they were giving me, and then they started to force more oxygen. And I said, no. They said, you have to be able to breathe that or we put you under the ventilator. And I said, no, you are not putting me under the ventilator, because I'll die, and I'm not going to die. And they said, well, then you better breathe. And I couldn't. And so when I couldn't, they went. Now I have no memory in the body, again, just like I didn't in the river accident. I was in a coma for 10 days, drug-induced coma, both mental and physical. In other words, no pain and no conscious, no feeling, no brain function at all. But they were keeping me alive with tubes in every single orifice we have, and more. And may make orifices where the arteries are and where the, oh my God. And then they tie all 4 limbs so that we don't pull the tubes out. But we don't have any memory of this, and we can't leave the bed. And nurses take care of us and our bodies 24/7, while the doctors keep us alive with whatever chemicals they put in and everything else. Whoa. So, after I caught COVID, an interesting thing happened. They said, well, now we can't give you radiation. And so we have to see if you're going to die or live. Because if they give radiation, then you have to leave ICU to go get radiation, and then you can't get back into, and you can't get anywhere because you might be carrying COVID with you. So you just have to stay and see if you live through this. And then here comes the third near-death experience. Totally out of body. So to keep it short, for all 10 days I was out of my body, having all kinds of weird experiences. I hardly can explain all of them. Some of them I can. But the one I can really explain that was amazing was in the 2 days when they told my wife that they thought they were not going to be able to bring me back. Once my lungs collapsed so fully, and the other night my heart failed so fully. And they said to her, when she said, can I at least talk to him on the cell phone? And the doctor said so cleverly, but very seriously, Johanna, you're talking to your husband now. Can't possibly have the same impact that we have to have every second to try to keep him alive. You choose. Or you can't choose. No. The answer was no. So just imagine how many people couldn't even talk to their loved one who was dying, much less visit. Anyway, here I was, and I have seen images of this before, so I haven't researched it fully, but I'm not the only one who's had an experience like this. That's cool, or weird, or amazing. For these 2 days, I was now on the surface of a 3-dimensional geodesic dome with hexagonal sections all around it. And in each hexagonal section, in mine, I had all 4 limbs tied to 4 of those 6 sections of my section. And now this is, I don't have scientific proof of this, but this is my experience of what was also happening. The other people up there with me were the other people in ICU trying to live. I haven't yet found out if there were 11 or 20 or 13 or 8, but there was a bunch of us up there. And every second, all we could do, it was so close, all I was doing was, again, like I had been on the edge of the river, I gotta live. I have to live. I have to live. I have to live. every second, just hanging on to life, and feeling that I could go. And I've heard people talk about they've just let go and gone. And I've heard people talk about they had a choice to stay or to come back or to go back. Or they didn't have a choice. They had to stay or they had to go back. I've heard them all. In this case, like in the first case I told you, I was told you're called here to have this conversation and to be sent back. This time, I didn't have any conversation with anybody. I was just hanging on and not willing to let go. Why? For me, because there are three things that I find most important in my life, in this order. Living, I just love living. I've heard so many of these other stories. Some people said, it is so amazing in that light, I just didn't want to come back. But then I had to because of my daughter or whatever, or what, you know? Or I chose to, but for some weird reason, that light was so amazing, but all I wanted to do was come back. And I know when I leave, I'm going to come back as fast as I can. I just love living. And I also love loving. And I actually mean loving as I shock white executives when I say, I mean from the boardroom to the bedroom. And I mean at the grocery store, and I mean here with each of you, and I mean with my children, and I mean on Zoom. Just those different kinds of love, of seeing and being seen. Call that love. And all the other versions of love. I just love living, I love loving. After that, my wife and my kids and everyone else, the way we can love, is my calling. I have never lost that calling from the first near death. And this time, after the last 2 to 5 years of all we have watched on TV, there isn't one of us here who hasn't noticed the difference between reading about it in the New York Times about something that happened in Mississippi, and that's tragic, but how deeply did we take it in compared to watching that knee on George's neck? How many minutes? So, remember the knife? 10 inches, a foot, 9, 6, 3. Boy, even though I didn't do those things, and none of us here did those things, look what humans are doing. 99% males are doing. It's not only whites, it's males around the earth. African tribes kill African tribes, Asians. In this continent, given the history of it, where are the Native Americans? And what have we done with blacks in 400 years? Differently than, Africans had slaves too, and so did Europeans, and, but we are really beginning to get the depth of how the entire culture and class and caste or whatever part we all grew up in and government and everything is really, we have really noticed more than ever, not more even than a 60s kids noticed. Speaking as one. If every single person here was equally healthy and equally educated, can you just imagine the quality of both the economy and the democracy, or whichever appeals to you? Can you imagine how much less it would cost in prison and in, and can you even imagine the self-interest instead of the loss of power? That even we might be able to experience by all of this humanity in better shape, instead of thinking we need to have self-interest of being power over and privilege over. Wow. I'm telling you, this work I was called to do just doesn't end. And I'm telling you, in the years since I could read again, since coming out of the coma, and by the way, it's skipping that it took a year to be able to breathe without any need for an oxygen machine at all. It took 3 months in bed, losing 60 pounds. You know what happens to your body when you're in bed for 3 months and you can't get out and you can't even move your body? You lose all your muscles. You can't lift your body. You know how it feels when you're having some nurse clean your whole body every time you defecate? You know how quickly we get human and go, okay, we're all the same, aren't we? You know what it would take? We all wiped our daughters' and sons' bodies, right? No big deal. Do we really want to wipe our husbands and wives and lovers' bodies? Well, not really. Can we? Of course we can. Anyway, whew, the learnings. Yes?
What happened to the colon cancer?
Thank you. Colon cancer. So once I was alive, I then had to wait until I was down to 50% from 100% oxygen coming in. They would only wait, they had to wait until 50% of the oxygen I need was coming in, and therefore I can survive on that, which means they can take it off while they give me radiation. Are you kidding me? I'm telling you, when you can't breathe, first things first. So I got in 5 weeks of radiation. They gave me in 5 days all at once. Oh my God. And now it's been a year and they can't find the cancer. Not MR, what's it called? MRI? Not MRI, you can't see it from above. Camera, you can't see it from within. You can find the scar. So imagine now the fun you have. My wife and I are sitting there, there's a camera in me, and we're looking at the screen going, whoa, I can't see it. Oh, what's that white? Oh, that's scar. Wow. And then they're so conservative, they have to say, well, we can't see it from the outside or the inside. It might still be in the wall. So it's going to take about another year or two before we really know that it's gone. And now they say, it's gone. But it took all that it took. Thank you for remembering that. That's right. So I not only killed the cancer, I have so many side effects from the chemo, the radiation, the drugs, the COVID, that you know what? So what? I am alive, I'm breathing, I'm loving, and I'm doing my work.
How has your diet changed in the meantime, too?
Hugely. Thank you. My wife not only taught me how to eat healthy stuff that kills, instead of anything that feeds cancer, you can still eat stuff that kills cancer. It's amazing, down to broccoli sprouts. I mean, everything. She's so good. So I eat really healthily. I don't eat sugar anymore at all. And I'm telling you, sugar just makes cancer cells go, ooh, yum, yum, yum. Do not eat any sugar if you can handle it. And the older we get, you notice the body doesn't like it much anyway, right? That chocolate chip cookie with walnuts that I love, now I put one bite in and immediately the body goes, ooh, the mouth liked it, but please, you can tell the difference in how the body responds the older we get. Anyway, thank you. I'm eating healthily. She even fed me so well in the hospital. She brought me food every day because the food in the hospitals is never any good. She brought me, I grew up in Minnesota, so just picture, she brought me butter, a quarter thing of butter with some baked potato under it. Oh, and corn on the cob rubbed in butter. And I got that 50 and 60 pounds back. I didn't get the muscles back until I've gone gym 3 days a week, and I have most of it back, but not fully. I was a pretty good athlete. But I walk, I'm back on the tennis court, in spite of the fact that the only side effect I'll share with you is called neuropathy. Chemo kills nerves. Which ones? The ones furthest away from your core. What's the furthest away? Your toes. What's the second furthest away? Your fingers. I have 10% feeling in my feet. I feel like I'm walking on elephant's shoes. I can't get the corner shots on the tennis court. I have to learn to move my feet. I have muscular use, but I don't have sensitivity. There are two kinds of neuropathy you can get. You don't want the muscular kind. You could be amputated in the extreme. I have the sensitivity kind. I can't feel anything. I sometimes get out of my car if I have sandals on, you know, and let's go over to the store, and I go, oh shit, where did I leave? I didn't even know I dropped my sandal or my shoe. I couldn't feel it. I couldn't feel that I was walking without it. I had to see it. So can I laugh about that? You bet I can. I'm alive. I'm breathing. I'm loving. And seriously, up there in that dome, I said, with all this stuff going on, I have to go back. And now I want to only coach and facilitate straight white men like myself who don't get it. No shame, no blame, no you're a racist, just, oh my God, can you please understand the impact that our privilege has had? And it actually isn't all self-interest. There's a cost to it. The self-interest is in equity, is in no power over or under. No matter what our job is, when we relate and connect, imagine, even with your lover, there's no power over or under. We're here. I see you and I'm seen, and we're equal. It is such a relief. It is the only way to live with everyone who's safe. I have got to come back and help others, because look what's going on. It's astounding what's going on. So that's that one. Your turn. Questions, statements, or wow, you had once this. Yes.
Last night was a program down in San Jose called, with a speaker from the Native American tribe back in the Midwest. And it was called Braiding Sweetgrass.
Uh-huh.
And it was involving the Peninsula Open Space Trust and trust grants. And it's talking about how the Native Americans out here, out west, are beginning to claim their space and to set it up to be able to teach their language and culture and have a place to do that.
Wow. Cool. The moon was cool last night too, wasn't it?
Yep.
Oh, you know the moment that was interesting, I forgot, just a moment, in the dome, after one morning, the next morning, after 24 hours, whether it was my heart or my lungs, I can't remember which one had failed, and I was up there hanging on to life. In the morning, somebody came and unlocked all these, yeah, and everybody else went, and I was left alone. They all died. As it turns out, I was the only one to survive in Oakland's ICU. And the next morning, but I didn't know that then. I was still up there hanging on to life. I didn't know they had died. I just assumed that. Why did they just whoosh? And I was stuck. I thought the lock didn't work or something. And I just hung on, even alone, for 24 hours alone, just hanging on to life every second. And then the next morning they came and unlocked mine, and I came back into my body instead of going whew, and I came back in the same way I had before. And this time it was my birthday, August 16th and 20, and that was the day in Oakland that there was immediate thunder and lightning and heavy rain. That never happens in August in Oakland. It just happened for about 4 hours, and it happened while I was coming back. Is that a coincidence? I don't know, but it was an amazing experience. And then when I was back in my body, I of course had no memory of anything, and my wife talked to me, and the brain was only partially back. There was still no pain. And she said, oh my God, you lived. You came back from the ventilator. And I went, I wasn't in the ventilator. I told them I'm not doing it. And they all had to, when the brain comes back only slowly, they all had to treat me like, it's okay. And I said, but I want my shoes. I want you to come get me and take me home. Bring my shoes. And they all had to go, just hang on, it'll take a few more days. It took 3 months. Every day I had to wear a mask, every day. And I would talk to her on the phone at 9:30 and say, all right, I have to hang up now because they have to come and mask me again fully instead of just these things, total mask. And they have to clean my body. Good night. Anyway, all right, what else? Did anyone else have any amazing experiences this reminds you of, or questions or thoughts?
A question about the experience of being in this geodesic environment. Any more details that you can remember about that, or were you just sort of pilloried there for the duration?
For that 48 hours while I was dying, that's all I had up there, was hanging on, and every second, I keep repeating, you just can only imagine how close it was, that I had to hang on so tight, just like I had to in the raft.
You were acutely conscious through that.
I was conscious only that I am hanging on to live every second. I am not willing to let go.
And no visitors that you know of on the other side.
No. In fact, you know, the nicest experience was amazing. There was a nurse. They were on 12-hour shifts. And the nurse who took, one of the nurses who took care of me, I never knew them. I never met them. I didn't know who they were. But they really, their job was to take care of your whole body while the doctors do everything they're doing to keep you alive. And especially when you're so drugged and everything. And when I lived and I was in the recovery unit, Kaiser, I was told that she wanted to come visit me. And I went, who? I mean, I didn't know who it was. So just imagine now, this next couple sentences is not about me, it's about her. So just picture her now. She walks in and goes, she just breaks out crying. And then she lifts her head and goes, you are the first one I've cared for in 6 months that has lived. 6 months since I flew to New York to help them when bodies were just going, we watched on TV going into the back of trucks. 12-hour shifts taking care of every body. 2 words, every body. And that's what I had to do. And you're the only one who lived. Can I just touch you differently now, alive? Oh, watching her tears of incredible joy and pain, and joy and pain and gratitude and life, and you're alive. And now she's a great friend. She's come to our house 2 different times and had meals with us. And we were supposed to do this Thursday, but she's out doing it in some other city. So we have to wait. We want to have a meeting at Kaiser during lunchtime for about 4 hours when the doctors who saved my life and the nurses can come have their experience, because they never get to see anybody who lived. And they just have to keep doing their work. Anyway, she's such a gift. Yeah.
Did you ever get a chance to review any of the medications they gave you during this whole time?
Great question. My wife has 3 manuals about that thick. She studied everything the minute she wanted to hear what was going on and what I was being given. She has it all written down. She can tell it all to you now without even turning the pages. And what she did with that knowledge was she asked the doctors if she could be with them on Zoom when they were serving me on their rounds. Not with other patients, but when they got to me, would they call her? And they did. Every single day, the whole 10 days I was under the ventilator. And other days they let her come in against the rules and bring me all that food. I got artichokes, as I told you, corn on the cob and mashed potatoes and everything to fatten me back up compared to what the hospital was giving, you know. And they let her break the rules and bring it to me. Because her knowledge of everything became so great. They said, God, are you a nurse or something? She said, nope. But she does have 2 master's degrees and she's really good at research. So I can't tell you one thing I took, and she can tell you all of them. If she were right here, it's amazing.
And the lesson there is that you need to make sure you have your own patient advocate in your...
Thank you. And not only that, boy, as maybe some of you know, the caretaker never is given the support and the understanding that they need to have while they're going through what they're going through. And I don't even just mean the nurse or the hired one. I mean your spouse, your lover, your child, your parent, whoever is taking care of you while you may or may not be living. Oh my God. And that was a long 2020, from chemo to survival, and all she had to do. And the pain of knowing that you can't even talk to your spouse, and she or he might be dying tonight, right now. And then COVID was everywhere, right? So we couldn't leave. We didn't leave for months. Friends brought food and left it at the gate when it was so strong. You know, now, I've had 4 vaccinations. And I'll hug anybody now. But, you know, that year we spent, and now it's almost 2 years. We've had to be really careful. Isn't it amazing? We've learned to read the eyes because we can't read the mouth. Pros and cons, but we look at eyes better. Thank you all.